If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. Today we are looking at Satanic Panic 2.0. What that means, and I will be briefly revisiting Satanic Panic 1.0 and the gullible coincidence theorists who maintain that satanic cults either don't exist, or they do and they're innocuous, or they do and if they're not innocuous, it's only single members of those cults acting alone, and none of it can ever be filmed. And if there's any kind of satanic ceremony where somebody's tortured and killed, it would just never be filmed for whatever reason. In the mind of these clueless coincidence theorists, for whatever reason, satanic cults are just incapable of filming their murders and ceremonies. It's a weird thing, and obviously completely ignoring dozens and dozens of cases where such videotapes were specifically recovered and used in prosecution of these murderous satanic cults. So again, the goofs, they're just that mentally weak. They have to pretend they don't exist. And here's the thing, it's not that I mind that. There's plenty of mentally weak Dunning-Kruger goofs out there. There's no issue. You want to live your life and pretend it's all not real, pretend politicians aren't corrupt, pretend the government has your best interest in mind and conspiracy theories don't exist or haven't been proven true time and time again, year after year after year after year, and openly admitted in declassified documents. If you want to live that kind of life, hey, all the power to you. I'm a live and let live kind of guy. The only issue is when these Dunning-Kruger goofs swarm comment sections, online social media, trying to push their hallucinations on others in a very vehement fashion with their ignorance on full display. The sheer desperation these goofs exhibit while trying to convince everyone else. I mean, most obviously subconsciously they're trying to convince themselves that it can't be true and it can't be real because of their mental weakness. But that's a different category of goof. That's not the category that keeps to themselves and lives the life they want to live on their own terms, pretending none of these dark individuals are out there committing these crimes, which is perfectly fine. If people should live however they want to live. They're not hurting anybody. They want to live with their head stuck in the sand. I mean, I would say that's probably a little bit dangerous just because they're not going to be aware of all the potential issues. Trusting their doctors, which kill way more people than any terrorists have ever killed. But anyway, that's their prerogative to live their life that way. When I address some of these Dunning-Kruger goofs, I'm only addressing the category of goof that makes themselves known and just continue to spam and or engage in the comment section, during live streams, and just all over social media, trying to push their own mental weakness and sticking their head in the sands of ignorance on everybody else and recommending everybody do that. Hallucinating that cults don't exist, satanic cults don't exist, they're not engaged in any kind of trafficking and murders, and even if they are, for whatever reason, they just magically would never film it. There's just some kind of magical Dungeons and Dragons spell that prevents them from ever filming their crimes. It's a weird thing. There's just so many goofs out there that hallucinate that snuff films aren't real or don't exist. And I'd be remiss not to mention, there is a distinction, obviously. A snuff film someone would have to have paid for its commission, which of course that has been done as well. I did a 9-hour podcast on satanic cults with, at least 2-3 hours dedicated to snuff films specifically seized in police investigations the world over and used in court convictions. So, and there's still no shortage of goofs just out there spamming their hallucinations that snuff films don't exist. And or even if they did, it would never be within the realm of satanic cults. And of course, we'll be touching upon the new information in the Delphi case, regarding Odinism and exactly what Odinism is. As always, if you find the podcast interesting and informative, want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If that's still not working, make sure to like and comment on more videos. That's how the YouTube algorithm pushes out notifications. I know a lot of people don't get them. Or you could just go to youtube.com/MINDSHOCK. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Get access to exclusive streams and chats. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment sections, or your insults and hallucinations. MINDSHOCK is all about education and learning, so I always do appreciate, even though I call out the Dunning-Kruger goofery, I still appreciate it and the lessons to be learned from it, clearly illustrating all these points about logic and psychology that wouldn't be able to be done as well if there weren't all these triggered goofs proving it in all of the comment sections. Not just on MINDSHOCK, but all over the internet. So we do have to be grateful for these goofs. Just because we call them out doesn't mean there's not also a gratefulness for it. Again, that would be a false dichotomy for the goofs that complain that it's just attacking these people. Not really. It's calling them out in an objective, logical fashion in order to learn from. Big distinction, huge distinction there. So, let's jump right in. Again, if you haven't checked out Satanic Panic Was Real All Along, this 9-hour podcast I did just highlighting all of these dark, dark cases where there are cults involved, where there's human trafficking, torture, and murder involved, unfortunately, many of the time involving children, generational satanic abuse. I went over leading mental health professionals in the field who have personally worked with thousands of cases. So one can only imagine how many people never even came forward. So clearly this is a widespread issue with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. And I don't even want to say millions of victims because hopefully it's nowhere near that. But on record, documented thousands of cases, dozens of which have been prosecuted in court. So in the wake of Richard Allen's attorneys bringing forth the Odinism angle, and I'll be doing a new podcast episode in the Delphi series specifically on that and how it ties to other things. Here, I just wanted to do an umbrella podcast because there's so much ramifications to the issue here that so many people don't want to look at, especially so-called true crime aficionados, of which a large percentage are obviously clueless goofs. I mean, they're not even on a true crime 101 level, but some of these are the biggest talkers, the most active talkers all over social media, are the most clueless, ignorant goofs. I mean, the dumbest people are often the loudest, no question. They're not always. Let's not fall for false dichotomies. But in a lot of cases, that is true. So, first of all, obviously we have Doug Carter speaking after the press conference, after Richard Allen's arrest, that no one has been cleared. Now, for whatever reason, a lot of the goofs circulating and following the Delphi case, they just can't comprehend, the kindergarten level English provided by Doug Carter. Now, obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but that's what we have. Like, a lot of these bootlicking goofs, they just worship at these altars of authorities and whatever the law enforcement says, even when they make constant conflicting statements. So, no one has been cleared. So that means Doug Carter is admitting that he himself has not been cleared, that other law enforcement have not been cleared, that mayors and former mayors have not been cleared, that various government officials have not been cleared, that FBI agents on the ground, even before the murders, have not been cleared. This is from Doug Carter's own mouth. And again, even if he said they had been cleared, that still doesn't mean they were really cleared, right? Or they were really cleared, but erroneously. This is MINDSHOCK. We don't fall for any silly logical fallacies, especially not false dichotomies. Any of those things could hypothetically be true. We don't have all the case files, and unless you were there during the murders, you don't know who actually did what and how many people were involved. It's really that simple, but the Dunning-Kruger crowd, they just can't grasp that level of simplicity or anything, really. So, The Sons of Odin, a podcast I did in the Delphi series specifically addressing Odinism and certain overlap with white supremacy groups, cults, whatever you want to call them, occult references, all of this. Now, whether they are doing it because they are true believers, true Odinists, or they're just using that to mask their Satanism. Now, again, this isn't rocket science. Satanic criminals would obviously pose and infiltrate. I mean, I don't really want to get into the Freemasonry, but Freemason is a few different theories. I'll just go over the two main theories. One of them is that Freemasonry originated ancient Sumeria or even Atlantis, whatever, and it is the Illuminati. It was this dark, this dark group seeking to control mankind for nefarious purposes, etc., enslave everybody through various means. Another theory is that the Freemasons were actually good, and they were infiltrated and usurped. So basically, the high levels are all compromised in serving Satan, whereas the people coming in at the lower levels, they think it's a good organization. And maybe it is. Maybe they're similar to certain church groups. They do outreach, they do charities, they help people. That does seem to be the case at the lower levels. A lot of goofs think it's impossible that there's any Illuminati connections because this is going on at the lower levels. Again, don't ask me to explain that level of goofery. I mean, that's just something else. I mean, that's just insane. That's kind of like even corrupt churches or mafias. Yeah, they're engaged in a lot of crime, but that doesn't mean they also can't do good things. Like serial killers can still help old ladies across the street. Serial killers can still help people's lives or volunteer in emergency situations and natural disasters. That doesn't mean they didn't go kill all those other people and torture people. So again, for whatever reason, a lot of these goofs, they just can't grasp false dichotomies. Very simple concept. If you're new to logic, check out the basic guide to logical fallacies here on MINDSHOCK. I actually did that breakdown on basic logical fallacies, went over a few dozen of them just in a prelude to flat earth debates, because obviously that's another category where just logic and reason are nowhere to be found in most flat earth debates, obviously barring a couple of exceptions. So yeah, logic and reason, that's the path to validity and truth. That's what we try to do here. So Odinists, if they're infiltrated, because generally, I'm not going to do a deep dive into Odinism. That probably needs its own, 3 or 4 hour podcast. But Odinism on the surface by itself, it's actually a good thing. It's celebratory of life, of nature, of goodwill. It's not Satanism in any way. As far as I know, there's not any specific rituals to violate the rights of others. It's celebratory in your successes. And respecting nature, celebrating nature, and all of that. It's, I guess you could call it pagan in nature, but there's a big difference between, because again, there's so many different brands of it, and a lot of goofs, they just fall for these hasty generalization logical fallacies, where they just paint everything with a broad brush, and they don't make the distinctions that are clearly there. Just like, serial killers can be Christians or Muslims. That doesn't mean they're actually embracing the actual religion they are purporting to believe in. That doesn't mean it has anything to do with their crimes per se. So same thing with Odinism. Most Odinists just don't go around killing children. I mean, what does this seem like? This seems like more of a staging to make it look like, if it wasn't the Odinists, was it made to look like the Odinists? Or if it was the Odinists, it's just a criminal scumbag Odinist who's using Odinism to kind of mask the crime, so to speak, or add a level of occult ritual to the crime, even though it doesn't have anything specifically to do with Odinism. And that's kind of the basic point I wanted to go over. And then now just moving on to Satanic Panic 2.0. Because there's already no shortage of goofs coming out of the woodwork crying and whining that Richard Allen's defense is desperate. They're trying to invoke Satanic Panic 2.0 as if Satanic Panic 1.0 wasn't justified. Obviously, it was justified. I mean, this is one of the... I mean, if I had to pick one mainstream media cover-up that was just so vast pre 9/11, I mean, Satanic Panic might be one of them. I mean, Vietnam, of course, but Satanic Panic definitely up there. definitely up there. And just downplaying the abduction, torture, and murder of children. Can you imagine the level of scum that would be complicit in covering that up? And on top of that, the level of scum that would pretend it's all nothing and just want to sweep it under the rug as if it's unjustified panic over literally the most precious, valuable entity that exists in the world, children. Can anybody think of something more valuable? Can anybody think of something that deserves to be protected more than innocent young children? I can't think of anything. But all of these clueless goofs crying satanic panic, clearly they don't care. And a lot of them are such brainless, triggered goofs. They have to add in that it's some kind of, it has to do with right-wing conspiracy theories. Again, using the term conspiracy theory as if that has anything to do with it being untrue. In fact, in these modern times, saying something is a conspiracy theory versus you saw it on the news, that would make it more likely, based on the track record of conspiracy theorists versus coincidence theorists, statists, authority-worshipping cultists, scientism cultists, etc. Saying something is a conspiracy theory today increases the chances that it's true. Not that it is true, but increases the chances just based on the last 100 years or so, particularly the last few years. And a lot of these coincidence theorists, these gullible goofs, they don't even comprehend that, which is, that adds another level of hilarity. But obviously, Satanic Panic is no laughing matter because of all of the children being exploited, tortured, murdered, and killed. And the goofs want to pretend it's not happening. And even if it's happening in much lower numbers than purported, and obviously it's kind of hard to say that because obviously a lot of this wouldn't be reported. A lot of it would be successfully covered up. I mean, look how willfully ignorant so much of the public is in even considering this as a possibility. Like, no matter how much Ted Gunderson exposed, no matter how far we are past the Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell era, since their crimes have been exposed and Epstein Island has been exposed, no matter how far we get past that, there's just a certain amount of goofs that they're just unwilling. They just don't have the mental capacity and the mental strength to even question the downplaying and why all of this desperation to downplay these things, satanic panic, etc., to downplay the satanic cult activity and the abduction, torture, and murder of so many individuals, children, adults, etc. I mean, this has been par for the course throughout all of human history, yet magically now, we live in an era where they're the most depraved humans around, yet magically they would never be in any satanic cults or magically engage in this activity under the umbrella of a cult. They'll do it all separately, but for some reason, I mean, that's the thing about coincidence theories. They just don't understand how mentally deficient they sound. I mean, they're borderline brain dead. Like, all these humans would definitely do this, but they wouldn't put on robes and do it and film it. I mean, just this level of goofery. I mean, this is just, it's really hard to wrap your mind around. I mean, this is MINDSHOCK, of course. It is quite mind-shocking how clueless so many goofs are. So in this attempt, all of these goofs coming out of the woodwork on social media, just saying that Richard Allen's defense is going for the Satanic Panic 2.0 defense, as if that makes it less likely. I mean, if anything, that raises the likelihood that there's some kind of legitimacy there. Now, I'm not saying there is or there isn't. I'll be doing a deep dive on that. Because it could clearly be staged by someone else trying to lay the blame on the Odinists, occultists, Satanists, whatever. Just like if somebody's trying to frame Ron Logan, they seem to have succeeded because they did a pretty good job with that, unless, of course, Ron Logan is somehow involved in some capacity, which seems to be the case, even if it wasn't directly. Like, let's say he knew somebody who might have been involved. It's such a shady situation, and for the goofs that hallucinate Ron Logan's 100% innocent in terms of he under no circumstances could have known anything was going down, could have known anything was weird going on in his property or anything. Like, he had to have been 100% oblivious and 100% innocent. I mean, there's a lot of goofs out there that are in that category. Clearly, there was some level of involvement, not necessarily in the crime, but knowledge of individuals doing shady things, just based on the company he kept, who was allegedly staying at his home at the time, and even what went on with that pig roast or whatever event was being masqueraded as a pig roast. Perhaps even under the guise that nobody would have believed that they were having a pig roast at that time of year, even though people have said that people do have pig roasts at that time of year. But in either situation, it could have been used as a cover-up for something. The coincidence theorists, obviously, they don't have the mental capacity to consider that. So where are we at right now with Satanic Panic 2.0? Unfortunately, I don't think Satanic Panic ever subsided, or whatever you want to call it, Satanists executing crimes. If anything, they've just expanded. You've had MK Ultra, trauma-based mind control is supposedly a very big component of this. Again, if you haven't checked out the previous episodes on Satanic Panic and MK Ultra mind control, check those out. I mean, there are deep dives into the exact mechanisms by which all of this occurs, the mountains of evidence, the FBI cover-ups, the CIA complicity. I mean, this is just, the amount of evidence is so overwhelming. I ask this question of coincidence theorists and authority-worshipping cultists all the time. How much more evidence could there be? Because there's already so much, I mean, there's already a mountain already. How much more could there be without it being completely 100% out in the open? Because if there's any more, then it's already 100% out the open, undeniable. Even the most mentally disabled goofs would see it. So in that situation, could there be any more evidence without it being completely 100% blown wide open? And of course, you know, in the next 100, 500 years, if it is, then that will be the situation. Same situation as, you know, with big tobacco and all of these other, the Tuskegee, all these other conspiracies proven true and admitted by documentation. I mean, MK Ultra itself admitted by documentation. So that's the other question I ask a lot of these gullible goofs, these coincidence theorists, authority worshipping cultists, MSM masses. I ask this question. If the government is willing to admit what they admitted, what would they not be willing to admit? And I'm going to close it out with that because I think that's a very poignant question that a lot of goofs simply refuse to answer. Hope everybody found another edition of MindShock True Crime interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.